Good morning, everyone. And today we're going to continue on with talking about acquisitions. Last week we started looking at the setup for acquisitions. So some basic administration functions, setting up your vendors and creating your budget. So with all of that done, you'll then be able to begin placing orders and ordering and receiving. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. So we're going to look at ordering, receiving, and if we have time, invoicing, print, single part monographs. So um, books, DVDs, CDs, those types of things that you just get in a single item. If we don't have time to do invoicing today, we'll hold that over for office hours on Thursday. So we'll be able to work through that as well. Okay. Please interrupt and ask questions as we go along. We'll go through the process of ordering. I'm going to show you the most efficient process. This isn't the only workflow option available in acquisitions. We can talk about other workflow options one-on-one as needed, but the big thing will be to look at the most efficient workflow that we can. I don't have any slides. It's all going to be demo today. So I've already hit record and we'll hop right on in. So let me share my screen and we can get started. As I work to share my screen, today is National 1 Cent Day. The U.S. first issued a 1 cent coin produced by a private mint in 1787, and it was designed by Ben Franklin. One sign read, "Mind your business," and the other said, "We are one," and this coin was 100% copper and was larger than today's penny. So our books today that we're going to order are all going to be about the penny. And we're going to go ahead and log in. I'm going to go in through the acquisitions tab. Now, as I mentioned at the start, we talked about some settings that you would need to take care of in the administration section, selecting vendors, and creating your budget. All of that is required for you to begin placing orders and creating those orders within the acquisitions module. Without vendors or a budget or fund codes to attach those orders, there's nothing we can do. Now, it's possible to begin in the orders accordion and to create an order from here, but that's not where we're going to start. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to show you the most efficient and streamlined workflows. Again, these are not by far not the only workflows available. But when I come into orders, I can search for any of my existing orders and I can sort them by status, by order name and number, by vendor, however I would like to. And I can see that I do have an open order, but we are going to create a brand new one. So we're going to start in our Discover items. This will default to all of WorldCat. The thought here is in acquisitions, we're ordering things that we don't currently own. And at any time, we can switch the index to search by keyword, title, author, ISBN, ISSN, OCLC number, whatever piece of information you have for that item. Now, if you are reordering something that you already have in your collection, you can switch this to My Library Holdings, so you can place that order and do your eventual cataloging or receiving against that record that you already have in your system. But we're going to stick to all of WorldCat because we're looking for some books that we don't actually own. So I can come in here and do my search, whether I'm doing a title search or I'm doing some sort of Boolean search where I'm combining some different keywords together to find what I'm looking for. So we're going to look for a book called A Penny's Worth, written by Kimberly Wilson. And it probably would help if I spelled penny correctly. Now, when I do my search, I have my filter options or my faucets over here on the near left side where I can filter down to the language of cataloging. Here we only have English option. I'm looking for a print book, but I can use some of these filter options to find exactly what I'm looking for. Then I'll see my search results. Now, when we were in circulation and we went through the Discover items, this screen looks a little different than what we see here. This is the current screen or the legacy screen. Circulation is what we'll see as the modern version of our search results screen. And at some point that will translate over to acquisitions and to Record Manager as well. But it's the same information that's provided. I can expand my search results to show up to 100 results at a time. Or I can look at a condensed view, which is going to take out my cover art and show me additional information pulling from the WorldCat record. But I will keep that enhanced view with the cute photo of our cover. Now, once I've filtered down as I need to, I can take a look at some information that's provided on the screen. I'll be able to see some bibliographic information pulling from the WorldCat record. So title, material format, language, publish information, ISBN, who did the cataloging, the language of the cataloging, the fullness of the record, and the OCLC number. And at any time, I can click on View Metadata and go into Record Manager and see the MARC record. I can also hover over the blue eye and see some expanded information pulling from the WorldCat record. So I can see the call number information, as well as click in to go back and see the metadata or see what it looks like in Discovery. Now you'll notice this is a full record, so it's considered it has enough data elements in the WorldCat record to consider it a full record. Or we might see a minimal record, or it might say a pre-record. Here we have miscellaneous record. It just depends on what you're looking for. Doesn't make one record better or worse than another. Checking just the chat. Then we can also see the WorldCat holdings. I don't own this book, so it doesn't have any indication of a holding. So currently it's not held. If I had any LHRs, it would list those here. We'll take a look at an example later. But I can see that over 500 libraries already have a holding against this particular record. I can always click into the title and see expanded details about the item itself. So I can see subject headings, I can see table of contents information. It will pull all that information from the WorldCat record. We saw this when we took a look at our, cataloging, our very limited cataloging session we had the week before, but we would be able to see this information as well. Now, if I decide this is the record I want to order against, I can come to the far right here to the Add To, and I can create an order or add it to an existing order. Or if I'm not the person who's placing the orders, maybe I create a purchase request so that it comes up on their radar and they can indicate and decide whether or not to order that particular title. We're going to create an order. This gives me a pop-up to allow me to add this item to the order. I can see at the top, it lets me know that while I may select the print record, there's also electronic versions of this. It will default to a one-time acquisition because this is a single part monograph. If it were a serial, it would default to subscription. The processing type will default to monograph as well because it's pulling that information from the WorldCat record. And I can choose the ISBN number here, or I can choose it on the order. I will see here the material format. So this is a print book with our little book icon. And I also have the option to apply an order template. Now, you won't have any order templates until you create them, but you'll see that I have a bunch of existing order templates that I would be able to use to apply to certain pieces of information. These templates can help cut down on some clicking once you get into the order. It will populate shelving location, fund code, and certain other elements that will help you as you work through the order process. Here I can create a new order or search for an existing order. So if I wanted to utilize the order that I already have created, I could add it to that. or I can create a new order, which is what I want to do. I get a second pop-up that allows me to populate the information for the order. So from here, I need to give the order a name. You could use the order number or name that from what you've purchased, or if you have some sort of naming conventions internally, you can utilize that. So I'm going to give it a name. And select the order type. Now, for the majority of your purchases, it's going to be a purchase order, but we do have options for approval plans, blanket orders, DDAs, gifts and donations, legal deposits, and standing orders. What's nice about the gifts and donations, it allows you to add and track those items through the acquisitions module, add them to your collection through the process of receiving, but it will not hit your budget. You don't have to worry about that going against your budgeted items that you have for the year. So purchase order is the most common option. Now at this point, I can go ahead and save this and create the order. I can add the vendor information later on when I get to the order part, or I can begin typing in that option, that the name of the vendor. So once I start typing, we'll choose Huck's Dog-Eared Books. It will populate in the drop down. So if I started typing Amazon, I have several options that I could choose from. Now, if the tax handling is going to be different for this particular vendor than what my default is, I can choose in the dropdown. Again, if you do not pay tax to any of your vendors, it doesn't matter what you select here. You just would not include tax on the order itself or on the invoice. And then I can add some order level comments if necessary. The vendor PO can be entered, or I can enter that later. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It will populate that order. So here it is, that order I created. And I can add this particular item to my order. So right now it says I have 0 items. I click add. I now have 1. And I can either close out of this pop-up and go back to my search, or click on the order name and order number to go directly into it. Let's add a few more things to our order. So let's look for Penny, the forgotten coin. And again, use our filter options to search for this particular item. You may also see PRE instead of full or minimal. And that typically is reserved, as I mentioned before in our cataloging session, is typically reserved for items that have not been published yet. So they're available to order against, but yet haven't been added. Check our chat. Oh. And I can go ahead and add this one as well. Add to and order. Now I get that pop up again. This time I'm not going to select the ISBN because I want to show you what that looks like when we get to that point. But because I'm still in the same session, that order that I created is still populated here. If I needed to change which order I'm adding this to, I can search for it either by the order name, the order number, or vendor order information. But, oops, didn't mean to collapse that. I can now go from 1 item to 2 items. Now, what's also important to note that if I want to order the same item for 2 different branches, or that will go to 2 different shelving locations, I need to enter it in twice. So it needs to have 2 lines on my order. If I'm ordering 2 copies and they're going to the same branch and same shelving location, I can update that information on the order itself. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 3rd to this order, a 2nd of this item, and now it says 3. So we'll see what that looks like when we get to the order. Let's add a couple other things. Take a look for Curious George. And go ahead and add that title. Now, if I were to search for a title I already have that I wanted to add a second copy of, let's look for, since we're in a children's book kind of theme, we'll look for 10 apples up on top that I know I already own a copy of. Here I can see I have this particular version that I have in my collection. We'll see that it is set for the audience level for all users. And I have 4 LHRs. So I could click on that and see what I own or see what other libraries own as well. And I could add this to my order. So if I click on that, it's going to take me into a slightly different view, and I can see the barcodes and the location for those particular items, and determine whether or not I want to add another copy. Well, I'll go ahead and add this to our order. And now I'll have 5 items on that particular order. Now, if I'm done adding to the order, I can click on the title. Let's just add some non-book things to it. We'll look for, not actually a penny, but we'll look for Penny Serenade. Because who doesn't love Cary Grant? My Wi-Fi connection in this room is not super great, but again, I can filter and look exactly for what I'm searching for. So decrease my 1852 results to 1290. Utilize my material format, looking for a DVD. And then we can add the preferred record. We'll go with this one to our order. And one more thing, just for fun, we'll do the Bed Penny Blues. Your girl loves a theme. We can search by our CD. Now, if I were to apply a template to this particular one, I should have one for, I thought I had one for music, but that's all right. We'll just pick one so that you can see what it looks like when we get there. And add it to there. It will populate some information for us. So now we can pop into the order. I'm going to click on the title. It's going to take me out of the Discover Items accordion and into the Orders accordion. And I'll be able to see the order name that I gave it. I have some action buttons, which allows me to save the order. I can come back for it. If I have set up the interaction between certain vendors, I can request a quote. I can place my order, and I'm using air quotes for that. Or I can delete the order and start over. Now, the information that I see here in this top accordion is just the details about the order itself. It's going to tell me when it was created, so the date for today, it was last updated today, the status of the order, it's currently open, and the order name I provided. This is still an active text box, so I can make changes to that order name if necessary. Now, the order number is populated by the system. So this indicates that it was a purchase order. So PO was created in the year 2025. And this is the 6th order that I've created this year. If I were to delete an order, that number goes out of commission and we move on to the next one. So if I delete this order, order number 6 doesn't get replicated, the next order would be order number 7. This is grayed out, it's system generated, and I cannot change it. And you'll also see that the order type cannot be changed once you select it when you create the order. If for some reason I chose incorrectly, I would have to delete this order and start over to select the appropriate order type. Now, when I created the order, I did enter the vendor information that's populated here. But if I need to change the vendor, I can do so. So I can click in here and I can do a new search. I can provide an order number that has been given to me by the vendor. And depending upon how much information I have added to the vendor record, when I selected the vendor, I may be able to populate that account number. So here we can see my Huck's Dog-Eared Book account number. It populates in the dropdown. Now, if you have multiple account numbers for a vendor and you've entered those, you would see those listed. So that way you could track which account number you're using for those orders. This might be especially helpful for those of you with multiple branches that are doing ordering across the branches and you track it that way. Now it's going to populate with my tax handling based off of what I configured in the administration section. But again, I can change this at this point if this vendor has a different way of handling that information. If you don't pay a tax, it doesn't matter what's entered here. But there are some libraries that have to pay the tax and then get rebates later. So that may be you, and you might want to track how that's handled against the items you ordered. So is it taxing the item cost? Does it tax the item, the shipping, and the service costs? Or are taxes included in the overall cost? And it will default to the currency that you've selected again in the administration area. But if you are ordering from a non-US vendor, you may be dealing with currency exchanges. So that might be something you might need to change and populate. You can add notes, adjust the shipping type. It'll default to standard, but you can change how that shipping is handled. And if you are working in multiple branches for the shipping information, you can make that adjustment as well. So here I have my Muncie Test Library, or maybe I might order for the Kemp branch or possibly for the Law Library. For those of you with multiple branches and you want to discuss how this is handled, we can take a look at that. It's handled in service configuration. Now down below, you'll see listed the items that I've added to my order. I have 7 items on my order, so I can expand this to see all 7 of them, or I can tab through using the page movement, the arrows to adjust to the different page. The gear symbol, and anytime we see this or something similar that allows us to adjust it, you can change the column information that you see. So if you don't pay tax, you might want to remove that column. If you don't usually have service charges or discounts, you can take those columns away as well. So it just depends on the information that you want to see. You can also add an option for display in WorldCat. So this will allow you to order something, show that it's on order in Discovery, allow users to place holds on it, and then once it is received, it will honor those hold requests. Now down below, we'll see the list of the different items that we added to the order. The blue eye will allow us to hover over, see that bibliographic information we saw over on the Discover Items screen. But if for some reason I catch at this order stage that this isn't the right OCLC record that I want to order against, I can change the resource, and it will allow me to do a search to find the correct record that I want to order against. And I would just select the title and it would change that on the order. I'm not going to do that here. but it does allow me to change it here and at the receiving stage. If I click on the title, it will take me into an item level screen for the order. So we'll do that in just a moment, but I want to finish talking about the different fields. Here we'll be able to select or change the ISBN number or ISSN number. I will see here the material format pulling from the WorldCat record, as well as the order type. So that one-time monograph, again, if this was a serial, it would say that as well. Now you can order series or serials all on the same order with monographs. We're only doing monographs today because the receiving stage is different and serials management is different, and we'll cover that in 2 weeks. So you can mix and match what you have on an order. Then our next column will be for my budget and funds. So I'll see there are my funds, my different budgets, the one that is still active, well, actually as of yesterday, and then my new budget if I'm able to order against it. We're going to leave it with my current budget. But from here, I'm then able to see just kind of in brief some of those different fund codes. Not all of them will appear in the dropdown if you have more than, I think it's 15 that you kind of see here in this dropdown, 10 or 15. But you can start typing either the name or the fund code number to find that particular item. So do we have one for children's? No, we'll just do books. That's fine. Now this next column will indicate the location. This is really important information to establish at this point because when I get to the receiving stage, this is what's going to help me build the local holdings record or the LHR. So if this is going to go to my Muncie library, that's fine. I can leave that here. I'm logged into my Muncie library, and that's what will default. If I were logged into the Kemp library or the law library, that would default as the location, but I can switch it if needed. I would then select the appropriate shelving location and indicate whether or not I want to display this in WorldCat. I can adjust the quantity. So if I want to order 2 copies of the same book going to the same location, I can update that here. It's also important to enter the unit price at this stage as well. You can adjust it on the invoice or even put it on the invoice later, but this is another piece of information that helps build the LHR once we get to the receiving stage. So it's also very important. So we'll go ahead and just make that $20. And we can add any discount, service charges, shipping, or tax information as necessary. Because I'm ordering two copies, it will update my total for both copies. I can add custom fields if necessary. So if I want to attach this to a particular field, I can. I've chosen to allow a recommendation. So it's going to choose the education option for me here. So these are items that I've purchased for the education department. I can add a note and hit save. I also have a notes field, so you can add notes that will be searchable in the order accordion area. So I can add a note and select who this note is for. So if I am only having these notes available for staff, or I'm not sending orders out to vendors, I'm not setting up that additional piece, I would just select staff, and then I can order this placed. And I can choose when this note shows up. If I just want the note to be attached to the item, I can just leave it as is and have none. If I'd like to see this note pop up at payment when I close out the invoice, I can do that. I can have it show up at receiving, or I can have it show up at both stages. So let's just go ahead and have this show up at both receiving and payment so we can see what that looks like. And I'll hit save. Now notes will append, so I can add an additional note, I can edit an existing note, or delete a note. Now, when I hover over the fund, I can see how much is available. So I have budgeted 51,550 items. I currently have nothing encumbered and nothing expended. So I have over $50,000 left in this budget to spend. Now, the reason this is differing the 50,000 to the budgeted, I may have a child fund underneath this book fund that has $1,500 in it. And I can continue this process as I go down. Here for my penny, the forgotten coin, I didn't select the ISBN number, so I can do that from this dropdown. Assign my fund code and select the location. We'll leave it at the Muncie Library, add this to the curriculum library, and make it visible in WorldCat. Now for the second copy that I have added for Penny the Forgotten Coin, this particular one I am going to send to a different location. So I sent this first one to the Muncie Library Curriculum Library shelving location. So once I've entered in my fund code, I can then choose the new branch and enter in the location. It's the same location name. And of course, add any additional charges that might be required. I can also save this and come back to it later. So I've saved it. I may have to go do something else and I come back and finish this out. Now, if I click on the title, as I mentioned before, it's going to take me out of the order and it's going to take me into a detailed screen for the item. This is where we can help create the templates. We'll look at the item we added down below that will show what information will populate. But the template will help add shelving location information, fund code. So if you have a fund code that's specific for a type of shelving location, you can have that created to allow you to skip some of those selections. For this particular title, Curious George Saves His Pennies, I have not selected an ISBN number, so I do need to do that. You'll see the acquisitions type and the processing type appear here as well as when I was on the previous screen when I added it to an order. I can indicate whether I want it to show up in WorldCat, set the audience level. By default, all of my new items are set to my library users, so only visible in my discovery instance. By default, yours will be set to all users, but you'll be able to change that default, and we'll look at that when we get to Record Manager. I can also add a requester. So this has to be a patron that's part of my WMS patron database. If I want to attach this to a specific person to say they've requested it, just so I have that information, I can track that on some reports. I can add departments into my admin so that I can track purchases by departments that have made those requests. So I don't think I have that in here anymore. I'll say I have the art department in here, but we can go ahead and add a requester. We'll add Minerva McGonagall, and it was requested by staff. I can add a request, the date the item was requested and when it was needed. I can also place a patron hold. So when I get to the receiving stage, it will let me know that there is a hold available for this particular person. And then I can immediately send that to CERC to fill the request. I can also add a reviewer. So if somebody on staff reviewed the order, we can add that here as well and track that information. But the same fields that we saw on the order screen, we see here as well. So we can go to the order tab. It's going to show me the order number. Each item gets added to an order item number. So this was the fourth item I added to the order, so it follows the same naming conventions. So this is a purchase order from 2025. This is the sixth order of the year. This is the fourth item added to the order. My location information, I can update that as well. So if I want this particular title to go to a different branch and shelving location, I can make that change here. I can add in the pricing information and any charges that might be applicable. I can set the fund code. You won't see any invoice information yet, but once the item has been invoiced, the invoice will be attached at the item order item level. See that I have one copy, it's not received. This will update once I save this. And that custom field. And any notes I'd like to add. Now I can create the template, which will help with some of this information, again, location and fund code and so forth. If I create a template, it allows me to add a template name and a description. If I've created a template, I will be able to edit those in the future. Once I've added information on this screen, I can hit save and go back to my order. And I'll see that information for Curious George will populate here. So all the information I updated will come through. Now for 10 apples up on top, I can continue with that process. But if I want to split an item between two fund codes, I can do that as well. So if they're sharing the cost for something, I can come in and select this assign the fund codes. So I can do this either by amount or by percentage. So if I want to do a 50-50 split, or I want to do this based off of the amount, I can make that change. So if I want to do this on for books, we can say 50%. And then I can add, and we'll just do pick administrative 50%. So we have 100% total. It will be split between the two funds, and I can hit save. And now it will update that information and we'll see the 50-50 split. Now, as you saw here, there are still green plus signs. So if I wanted to split this among more fund codes, I can do that as well. And I can continue the work that I'm doing. Now for our Penny Serenade, our DVD that we ordered, I selected my AV fund code. You'll see that it's in red. This has gone over its budgeted amount. I can still use it and make adjustments on the budget, but you'll see that the budgeted amount was $3,500. I have $2,288 encumbered. I've expended $1,220, and I'm in negative $8 in that particular fund. So I can still order against it, but it does indicate and let me know that there is some negative here that I need to deal with. Let me check my notes. So the question in chat is, the requester and patron hold linked? Is there an option where these can differ? So the requester, if I choose to place a hold, will place the hold for the requester. I can't have, I don't have two options where I can have a requester and have a patron hold, but I can put the requester in and place a hold for the item once I've placed the order. If I allow, I can either allow the patron to do it through WorldCat, or I can place the hold for the patron if necessary. So they are linked on that screen we just saw, but they don't have to be. You don't have to place a hold for the requester. If necessary, you could just add it as the requester. Now, my last one was the one that I used with a template, and you'll see it has populated some information. Now, this doesn't really match the particular item I ordered because I just picked a random template, but you'll see that it populated the fund code, it populated the location information, it populated indicating that it will show up in WorldCat, and it also added cost information, which was part of that template. So when you create your template, you may want to do that before you add cost information. Otherwise, you'll be changing that on a regular basis. And here I'm ordering 2 copies, and that was indicated based off of the template. So what information you want to come through on the template, you want to create it before you add maybe cost information and so forth. I'm just going to leave that as is, but we'll actually change this to AV, and we'll put this at the music library. Sounds like jazz. So for all my items that I've ordered, my grand total is up to $173. Not too bad for a day's worth of work. I can save this and come back to it later, maybe add additional items to the order, or I can place the order and move on to the receiving stage. We're going to go ahead and place it. Oh, we'll just continue. I'm not going to notify the vendor about this order. There are certain vendors that allow you to send information to. It will send an email from WMS about the order. Some vendors do not. Amazon does not. EBSCO does, or Gobi, some of those vendors. But for most of your ordering, that probably won't be the case. So I'm going to place my order. It's going to update my status from open to placed. And then I can go and search for these particular titles in Discovery. So if I go into the Muncie Library, I can search for, hopefully I didn't go too fast. I can search for Curious George, Saves Us Pennies. I did go too fast. It will say that it's on order. So it will populate information down here and show that it's on order since I selected to show it in WorldCat. But I moved a little faster than my system did this morning. So the next stage is for me to wait for those items to come in, and I'm going to go to the receive an invoice stage. So the accordion here allows me to receive an invoice at the same time. Now you'll see that's the most streamlined workflow, is to receive and add items to an invoice at the same time. Those tasks can be broken out depending upon your staffing and your needs. But what I'm going to show you today is the receive an invoice process. Now, everything I ordered was a monograph. If you had mixed items on an order, you would then need to switch between the processing type to make sure that you get everything on the order received and invoiced appropriately. This includes my local resources that we talked about last week. So those items that I'm not fully cataloging, but I do want to receive an invoice off of my orders. So we're going to stick here. The first thing I need to do is create a new invoice because I am going to add these items to the invoice. And enter in the vendor that I used for my order. Now I can change my invoice date if necessary and change the tax handling for all those items, but I'm going to leave that as is. You'll see over here now on this side, I've populated the vendor and it's automatically populated the invoice number for the invoice I created. And now I want to view the items that are outstanding for this particular vendor that haven't been invoiced. When I click view items, it's going to be blank to kind of save on the taxing of adding items and overloading the system. I just need to come in here and do a blank search. And here we're going to see all the items that are not received from this particular vendor that are monographs. So I can see those Bad Penny Blues, My Curious George Saves a Penny, Penny Serenade, and so forth. Now, based off of the information I put in the administration section, it will pull in the appropriate classification from the WorldCat record to populate it when available. It's also editable, so you can make those changes. When I take a look, I can hover over the blue eye, and it's going to show me again that bibliographic information. I have 2 copies that I've ordered. If I owned a couple, it would say that here. I can pop out and see the metadata or what it looks like in Discovery. But I can also change the resource. So if I ordered again, if maybe I ordered the 4th edition, but they sent me the 5th edition, I can go in here and change that resource, do a search, and find the correct bibliographic record. Now I can come in here and add a barcode for the item. You'll see that it populated the location information that I added on the order. This is what's going to help me build the LHR, as well as the cost information for replacement costs for missing or long overdue items. Now, if I add a barcode here, it's going to give me an error because it's missing the classification. So at this stage, I do have to have a call number included, and I need to add a barcode for the receiving process. So I can come in here and just add my call number and add my barcode. There isn't a receive button, so I just need to have my cursor at the end of the barcode and hit the enter key. And I now have a pop-up note letting me know to give this to tech services. That was part of the template. Or if you created a receiving level note. I can close and I'll see that that one's no longer listed here, and I'll see it listed down below. It's been invoiced and I can see the invoice name that I've added it to. Now this one, because I provided a call number, it will populate because of the administration choice I made down here in the settings to have the call number repeat for additional copies that I ordered. So when I put it in for the first time, it populated in the second copy. So here I can come in and enter the barcode. If I repeat the barcode, it's going to give me an error and say I couldn't use it because it's already in use for another item. So I need to enter in a different barcode. And hit enter. Same note. And I can continue this process. Now we can see that this particular item was requested by Minerva McGonigal, and I want to make sure that that hold is honored. So I would then pass this off to CERC to be checked in and for the hold to be triggered. Now, before I move on, let's see if I can see that on order in Discovery real quick. There it is. So you can see here that it says it's on order. And if you allow for place holds, that place hold might show up just depending upon how you have it set up. So here I can place a hold for that item. I have 2 copies on order. Let's continue with my and receive all of my items. Almost done. More. This just lets me know that I have this item was requested by the education department, and I may want to let them know that it's available. And our last one, as I mentioned before, I can edit the call number as needed. But if I need to change the location, I would have to go into the LHR itself once I have received it. So what does that look like? Well, if I go in and I search for these particular titles, let's go in and search for this one. Let's go to circulation and search. So here I can see this particular item is available. I have ordered it, I have received it, I have added it to an invoice, and now it has created the LHR. So I can see the barcode, the shelving location, the call number, the cost information, and it's now available and ready to circulate. So if I search for this particular item, I'll see that it's available in Discovery, ready for folks to place a hold or to come in and check it out. I have 2 copies. So one of the options you have for your circ policies for the collection type policy is to indicate whether or not an item becomes available as soon as you add it to the collection, whether you're ordering it or cataloging it, or if it's in processing. So the difference here is my Kemp library, everything just becomes available automatically. And my Muncie library, most things are in processing for 2 days. So you can set in processing for a period of time or until it's checked in at circulation. So depending upon how you want to handle that. So that's why the difference in the availability. If I go in and check this item in for the Kemp at the Muncie Library, it will switch and become available. So I can trigger that to happen faster than the 2 days. But all of that information that I populated on the order will help us build the LHR. So the branch information, the shelving location, the call number that was entered at receiving, the barcode entered at receiving, and the cost information entered on the order. Now, if I want to change the location, I just need to edit the item. And maybe I put this on, I think I have a new books display. So we'll move it to there. And that will update. Now you'll see I switched out of acquisitions and went to circulation because I didn't close anything out. It takes me back to where I left off. I'll see that order and I can come back into receiving. But I received everything. It's all listed here on the invoice. I can choose to click the invoice here or go into invoices and search for it. Looking for that fastest workflow, clicking on it in receive will take me right into the invoice. And it follows the same patterns that we saw at the order level. The date created, when it was last updated, the status of the order, the invoice number that I provided when I created it at receiving, the date, the vendor, and then the system generated invoice number. And I can add any additional invoice IDs or payment reference IDs as needed. So currently this is all encumbered. So if I go to my budget, I would see all of this encumbered, this $173 worth of items. It's part of that encumbered amount, which is listed up here. And then if I look at the different funds, this was -8. It's now up to -99. So my books encumbered has increased. To me, you can't tell this here, but I can click on the title and see all of or click on the link and see the titles that are all currently encumbered. And this will include the new titles that I just added. So there's Curious George Saves His Pennies, and we'll see all of those listed there. So once I pay out the invoice, it will update that encumbrance to take it over into expended. Here, I can come in and make some adjustments. If I need to change the fund code, I can do that. If I need to change the unit price or add any discounts or service charges or shipping or anything I need to do there, I can do that at this stage. I can also add credits, debits, and refunds as needed. But once I have managed all of this, I can pay it out to the budget, and it will switch all of those over to expended and no longer be encumbered. That note that I added to show up at payment, there it is. And it says invoice paid. Now, if something were to happen and I do get a credit later on, or there's an adjustment, I would come in here and I can unpay it and make adjustments to this invoice. What's also important to note is that changing this here does not change what's in the LHR. Once the LHR is created, I have to change it at the LHR level. So if I want to reflect any discounts or changes in cost, I would have to go into the LHR and adjust it there. But now all of these have been moved from encumbered on my budget to invoiced. So it's hard to see all of those changes with the big numbers, but you know, that's all been adjusted. So that AV that I purchased will show up. There's that bad penny blues that I ordered. It's no longer encumbered. It's now been expended. Now, all those items that I had that were ordered, I can search for them. So we had searched for a pennies. Will no longer show on order. Well, it shouldn't. It should show as available. Again, moving too fast. It's not available because of the location and the collection type policy, but that's listed there. So next, in 2 weeks, we are going to start looking at serials management. The ordering process is the same for serials as well as for electronic resources. It's the receiving piece that's a little different and how you manage those. So we'll talk about those in a couple weeks. Kim, yeah, what's your question?
With this workflow, when would the local bib data be added in?
I can't hear you. Hold on, let me make sure that it's me.
I think it's you, Beth, because we can hear Kim just fine.
And not you. It must be me. It won't let me. Hold on. All right, Kim, try again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Great. So my question is, with this workflow, which has some really nice advantages, when would you be putting in your local bib data?
So your local bib data is not handled in the acquisitions area. So that is all managed in Record Manager. So once you've received and you've added the item to your collection, you would then be able to go into Record Manager and add any local bib data, because it can only be added and updated in Record Manager.
Okay, so that would be after what you showed us, after receive, and that's probably when you would print the spine labels too?
Yeah, and you'll be able to add those items. So spine labels can be printed and managed in 3 different modules, Record Manager, acquisitions, as well as circulation. And we're going to talk about it later with Record Manager because it's you create one template and it's available across the three modules. But yeah, you can do it at that stage. It just depends on how you want to handle it. Some libraries say, their acquisition staff will handle the ordering and receiving, and then it goes to their cataloging folks who will review and update the call number and add local bib data and print labels and do that kind of work. So it just depends on how you want to balance out the workflows. But yep, that's all handled once the item's received.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So again, those were the most streamlined workflows that we can take a look at. Again, those jobs can be split up. Receiving can be separate. Invoicing can be separate. And how you manage the different items, that also can be separate as well. On Thursday, when we get into office hours, we'll take a look at mixing and adding local resources to an order or to an invoice and managing those different pieces for ordering. So you can have kind of a mix of things on order, but everything has to be with the same vendor, but it can be a mix of electronic, serial, monographs, local resources. So if you're ordering, let's say from Amazon, and you order a box of paper, as well as a book, as well as something else, a CD, a DVD, that can all be on the same order and then on the same invoice. All right, folks, we're a couple minutes over for today, but hopefully that helps kind of see how some of the processes work. You can use acquisitions, you can choose to wait and use acquisitions, but please utilize my test environment to go in and create some orders and practice that ordering and receiving process that we just went through. I'll make sure that all the recordings are up to date and posted before I'm done end of day Thursday. I am furiously working on a lot of stuff. It hopefully we'll get all that done, and I will talk to all of you on Thursday. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.
You too. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks. And Catherine, we're meeting now, so I'll just hang out here.
Sure. Do you mind if I use the restroom before we get started?
Yeah, go ahead and I think there's a Teams invite for us. So I'll log out of this one and we'll just log into the new one once you get back.
Thanks.
Thanks.